Hey guys, I'm thinking of putting a new bit in this show.
Yeah.
Called Why Windows 11 Sucks This Week.
Ooh, do tell.
There goes Microsoft as a sponsor.
Yeah, we were never going to get Microsoft as a sponsor.
No, or Russia.
Maybe Raytheon. They make Tomahawks.
We'd like to sponsor your podcast. Please, no.
Hey guys.
Hey, Carl.
Hey, how's it going, Carl?
What's up? So as I was saying, this is why Windows 11 sucks this week. You ever have the situation where you plug in a mouse or a phone and the system recognizes it, and then like 2 seconds later it doesn't?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then 2 seconds later it recognizes it, and 2 seconds later it doesn't. You get caught in this time loop vortex.
The infinite hell loop.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so it turns out that in Windows 11 anyway, if you go into the device manager and you find the device and you manage to right-click on properties while it still exists, there's a power management tab.
Get out.
And yeah, and it basically turns the device off if it thinks you're not using it. Uncheck that. It's typically on the USB hubs, but you should also check in on the HID devices, human interface devices.
Yep. Good tip.
Yeah. And I found this just by random Google search. And it took me to a YouTube where some guy with an Indian accent was explaining it. And I'm thinking to myself, why does somebody in Mumbai who barely speaks English need to explain this to me? Why does this happen? And, why is this guy like, he's got all the answers and Microsoft doesn't?
Right.
Terrible.
It's not the same guy that calls you, though, at home and says there's a virus on your computer.
Might be.
No, that's a different.
Might be.
It's not his division.
It's a different guy. All right. So what's in our storybook for this week?
Storybook. There's going to be a bunch of patches, as usual, and a bunch of fun stuff. So Microsoft's trying to get ahead of all of this ransomware stuff, if they can.
Okay.
So I know we've talked about Imitet in the past.
Yep.
Right, Patrick? It's one of your favorite pieces of ransomware. So a lot if you could have a favorite, that should be our thing. What's your favorite ransomware?
The one, one where the keys are published.
Yeah, that one. What's interesting is a lot of these are deployed the same way. Sometimes they're a little bit clever. Like Imitet does some interesting, clever-ish things. But for the most part, they're deployed the same way. It's conning somebody into clicking on something they shouldn't. Is 99% of the time what happens.
Is this the thing about disabling internet macros?
Yeah. So that
took them long enough,
right?
It's February 2022, and they finally think, hey, maybe we should disable internet macros in Office apps by default.
It's only for documents that start with A through C, and then they'll roll it out over time. I'm just kidding. That's not true.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. So, the three of us have been developing macros since, I don't know, the 90s. And they've been around ever since as a fantastic vector for breaking in organizations. Just send them an email with an Excel spreadsheet and double click on it, right? So Microsoft announces, you know what would be great? We should stop those.
You can imagine that meeting, like everybody turns to the guy and says, genius.
Acting. Thank you.
I got an idea, boss.
Acting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this won't be all Office documents. It's like Patrick had said, it's stuff that comes from the web. And more technically, it's stuff that gets what's called the mark of the web, or MOTW. So if it comes downloaded or email or whatever, they will be disabled by default. And it's just going to throw up a really nasty, hey, guess what? This came from a really dirty place type banner, which would be cool.
Yeah.
Be fun to see. I'm excited.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, well, I just want to know what took them so long.
Do you want to know why I'm excited?
Because you're going to exploit it.
Why are you excited?
Because there's already conversations in my Twitter stream of people who have been able to bypass this. So it's going to be awesome. You're going to tell everybody in the world they can now trust anything that comes in email, because Microsoft will save them.
And they can't.
However, not to poo-poo this, I think it's actually a fantastic step in the right
So
direction.
this is like being happy that they sold fake life vests to the Titanic. This is not a healthy attitude towards life, Dwayne.
But if I was the ocean and I wanted to swallow up all the people, then I'd be okay with it, right?
Okay. In that analogy,
It's all about your perspective.
In that analogy.
Hey, and why couldn't Rose move over and let Jack on that door? Anybody?
Because Rose doesn't like to be touched.
Yeah. So
right,
no,
well,
I think it's a move in the right direction, though. Honestly, I do.
Well, there's more Microsoft Windows melees in the news, right?
Melees in the news. Which one are we talking about next?
Spoolful.
Oh yeah,
Spoolful. Oh, this one's awesome. Okay.
Which means it's bad. So if
bad.
let's give everyone a quick
Translation.
primer. If I say it's convenient, it's insecure, and if Dwayne says it's awesome, it's so bad.
So bad.
And I just say WTF.
So this one's really cool. The Spoolful came out 2 days ago. So it was patched this past Tuesday.
Okay.
Ish. There's already
Patched-ish or Tuesday-ish?
Patched-ish. No, patched-ish. Definitely on Tuesday, but patched-ish.
Okay.
But what's interesting about this is, so this is what we call an LPE or PrivEsc, local privilege escalation. So you're a local nobody on a Windows box, Windows 10 box, just a general user. You could run this exploit right now, and it would run any command you want as system. So you could add yourself to the local admins group. You could then dump all of the hashes locally for the users that are in the local database. Then you go crack them, and you could then log in as an administrator. There's all sorts of cool things you could do once you become an administrator on a local box.
And if you didn't understand what Dwayne just said, go back and listen to episodes 1 through 29. It's in there somewhere.
It is definitely in there somewhere. It's like Ragu. Right. It's in there.
We talked about print spooling. We talked about hashes and hash codes.
Yeah. Microsoft's had a hell of a time with print spooling. In short.
Well, they wrote it a million years ago.
The spooler. They did. Yeah. But the spooler is a place where you can submit a document and it holds that document until it's ready to be printed. But there's a lot of complexity in there. Like, well, who can send a document there and who can create a printer? Like most of you think, okay, well, if I'm going to have a printer, I literally have a physical printer, right? This thing that's sitting in the house or in the office that needs to be plugged into something or connected to the Wi-Fi.
Right.
But in Windows land, the printer is just another piece of code. It's just another thing that can be created in the operating system.
You could print to PDF, for example.
Yeah, exactly. You can print to PDF. You can print to like a raw port. There's all sorts of things you can do with printing. So in this particular bug, you have the ability to create a fake printer and then what's called a symbolic link or a junction point. Don't worry about what that is. That bypasses some boundaries and gives you the ability to be an administrator. So that's it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice.
So you can be an administrator not just for printing, but for anything. You can do anything it's a privilege escalation?
Anything for one command.
Oh.
So you can run one command. And technically you could parlay that into multiple commands. But you can run one command as an administrator.
Your command could be CMD, and then you could open a window and then just go to town with PowerShell or whatever, right?
Yep. A lot of the proof of concept code out there, what they actually do is they add a new user to the computer locally and then add it to the admins group. And then you just log in as that user.
Wow.
And now you have full access to the desktop to shut off antivirus, bring over all your tools, all sorts of fun stuff.
It sucks that, Microsoft really isn't making money on Windows anymore.
Yeah.
Windows is just sort of a delivery mechanism for other software and services.
Well,
like Android is or
is it really not profitable anymore, or is it just that's not their cash cow?
It's much less profitable. Their focus is now on Azure for money. And let me tell you, they're getting it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Me included. All right.
So what's interesting about this is lots of people, most people don't need to worry about this because it's a local privilege escalation where it may be coupled with something else like a macro, right? That pulls down this and then runs it so you can become an administrator on the local box, that sort of stuff.
Right.
So if you're not clicking on things you shouldn't be, you really shouldn't worry about this.
Okay.
But it is an interesting exploit. Funny story. We actually used it this week
Oh,
in an engagement. And we were on a box that has no internet access.
Oh.
And we were trying to get this tool down. And we're like, how do we get it down? And what we decided to do was take the executable for Spoolful and turn it into hex. And then break it up into small strings. And then put it as a DNS text record. And then write a small bit of PowerShell that then queried DNS remotely to pull down the tool over DNS.
Yeah, eyes
And
glazing over.
So imagine.
Yeah. Welcome to Star Trek.
So imagine if someone.
Meet my friend Geordie.
So
LaForge.
let me explain this a little bit. So imagine if you put someone into a cell. This is from every crime movie you've ever seen. You put them in a cell, and they're not allowed internet access, and they're only allowed controlled books, and you basically put them in a cage, and you think, well, they have no chance, but you allow them to make a question about like who's the president of the United States and general knowledge, and they hide in that general knowledge request everything they need to break out of the prison. That's what he did, but he used DNS requests, which if you want the system to be functional, you can't block DNS requests. You can't say, oh, it's kind of like it's kind of like punishing your kid by saying you can't read. You can't punish a kid that way. That's not the way it works. So
right, DNS makes the internet
exactly,
work.
and local networks.
Directory.
I mean, you want to
because we talked about this.
You want to play.
We talked about how do we defend against this, and the answer is you have to watch for excessive number of requests. You can't stop it. You can't block it. You have to watch for it. And so this is where monitoring comes in. I mean, I don't know if that's a good idea that Dwayne just taught people this very sophisticated hack, although they need a lot of skill to pull it off. And it's out there.
Career
advice. Yeah.
Moment.
It's not something we invented. It's just something that
No. Most hackers know this. Like, hey, if I can't get out over port 80 or 443 or pull data down that way, I'll use DNS or I'll use some other UDP channel, and it's slower, but it works really well, especially if you're in a restricted sandbox, which is.
And what's UDP, Dwayne?
User datagram protocol. That's where you have a non-session connected. It's like TCP,
right?
Except for it's sessionless. So
it's part of the TCP/IP stack, which is the internet, essentially your internet software. And when you make typically what you do with a website, and this is really cool. We should, Carl's tips, right?
Oh yeah.
When you make a connection to a website, first you go through DNS, www.microsoft.com or whatever, and DNS server comes back and says, "Oh, that IP address is whatever it is. This dot that
How do you spell that?
PBWT.
That was pretty good, actually.
I've been sitting on that one for all my life, really. So a connection is made, and it's a connection that can either be severed by the client or the server. But in this case of the web, it's HTTP. The server gets the connection. You send a request. The server sends the response, which shows up on your page. And then the server cuts the connection. With UDP, there is no connection. You just say, I want to send this data to this endpoint. And there's no guarantee that it's going to get there. Mm-hmm. And there's no guarantee that if you send them in order, that they'll be received in order. So I would take this moment to tell you a joke about UDP, but you might not get it.
So for those who are more in my tribe, TCP is like a tow missile, which is guided to its target all the way to the end. It's connection oriented.
It's like a bottle rocket.
And the UDP is more like a javelin, which is fire and forget.
Right.
Thank you, Patrick.
I thought you'd like that.
I like it. Yeah, that's good. And so UDP is faster than TCP.
Right. There's less overhead.
So that's typically what's used in, like streaming video like we're using right now, where packets are just sent. And if one is missed, oh, well, you freeze for a minute, kind of like Patrick is right now.
Right.
Frozen.
We
can hear him because Zencastr is prioritizing audio over video.
Oh, that's very smart.
Yeah.
So there's your networking lesson and hacker advice.
All in one. All right, let's move on to the next story.
Yes, let's move on to
Is this
the next
the
story.
bleeping computer? FTC says Americans lost $547 million to romance scams in
Hey,
2021.
I thought this one right here was pretty pertinent as Valentine's Day is right around the corner.
Yeah.
And listen, if you're in, and I'm going to use this example, and this is a real example from somebody we've dealt with. If you're in a relationship that's only digital on your phone, whether it's in WhatsApp or Discord or whatever, and the guy or gal you're talking to is a bazillionaire and lives on an oil rig but needs your help to log into their bank accounts,
Beware.
probably not the best thing to do.
Smells like bullcrap.
You might be a redneck.
So this is super common as a social engineer on people. It's the romance social engineer.
Well, I told you about the phone call that I got. Like, this was, early on in the show. I got a phone call from somebody who was telling me that am I the one that stole thousands of dollars from her? And, and it turns out there was somebody else with my name, but she did a lookup on the internet and found me and somehow found my number. No, it was a Facebook message. That's right. No, it was a phone message.
Yeah, because you talked to her.
Yeah, I called her back and I said, well, look, it definitely wasn't me. I had an alibi, but even so, I told her basically what was going on and tried to help her realize that it was a scam. But it was a romance-based scam.
Yeah, they're super common. Honestly, it's tugging at the heartstrings. And then, you start talking to people, and they're doting over you, and it's a couple different things. Sometimes it ends up being a blackmail scam.
Yeah.
Which the one we were dealing with was. Sometimes it ends up just being a, hey, can I, there was a problem with my car. And I need, $1,000 or whatever. And after you've been talking to this person for a month or two, you're like, yeah, sure, I'll send some money. So just realize if you don't know the person, even if you know the person, like actually in real life, it still could be a scam, but just be careful.
Yep.
During this romance season. Because what was it? $547 million in 2021. That is a lot.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That is a lot of money.
All right.
And on that note,
PHP everywhere.
Yeah, we talked about last week. If you guys were listening on last week's show, we had talked about a plugin. Actually, I think every week we talk about a WordPress plugin that has some sort of flaw.
My daughter says, hey, I'm finally getting ready to have a professional website, and I've got her domain that I've had with her name for a long time. She says, can I help? I said, well, first thing you got to do is build one. And I would go to either Wix or Squarespace, but don't go to WordPress. She goes, why? And I said, listen to Security This Week.
I mean, that's not fair. It's reasonable, but it's not necessarily fair, because the problem with WordPress is it's like Microsoft with Windows was for so many years.
Yeah.
It's the biggest target
because it's very popular.
It's super popular.
Yeah.
There's lots of add-ins. If you use WordPress plain, well, you get a pretty boring site, and that's the problem. But it's those add-ins that cause the problems most of the time.
Yep.
Well, I think a lot of people assume because the add-in is like in a global sort of add-in store, if you will, like a plug-in market, that people are going through and vetting all the code and making sure there's no way to take it over, and there's no way to exploit it, and there's no way, and that the plugin's actually trying to do what you think it's trying to do. And the problem there is if you're not a code jockey like the three of us are, you're not going to read through the entire plugin and understand exactly what it does, because that's all Greek. So.
All right, so this is about RCE flaws, and remind us what RCE stands for again.
Remote code execution.
So remote code execution. Someone can run a bit of code from anywhere and hit a plugin that's running on your WordPress, and then have your local WordPress website run code.
Not a good look.
That's generally
no.
So the problem is, this is the way on to the network. Typically, this is the way you get hacked initially. And so, like, if I have an RCE that's exposed to the web, I don't need you to click on anything. because I've got a way to get you
Right.
to remotely execute that code.
Yeah, and that brings up a good point I want to talk about right after this. But so in this particular exploit, just if you're running WordPress and you're running the PHP Everywhere plugin, realize there are 30,000 websites worldwide right now that are running the vulnerable plugin. You need to go and make sure you go and patch. And there's a link we'll put with the show, and there's several CVEs associated with this particular exploit. So
Yeah.
one thing I wanted to bring up with this, because every time we're always constantly talking about RCEs and people who can hit either WordPress or whatever and exploit and get access to your site and do all sorts of nefarious things. We constantly get asked by and sometimes audit customers who one of their first lines of defense are geofencing.
Which is?
Where they say, hey, you know what? So they'll say, I have a website and I sell, I don't know, falafels, and I only sell them to the local, area in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So I'm going to restrict who can access my website to only people in San Francisco or only people in the United States or whatever.
Or a 50-mile radius of San Francisco or whatever.
Right. And it can, and then, anybody trying to hit them from Russia or China or, the UK or Greece or whoever can't hit them because they can't even see the site.
Okay.
Now, we've had customers do this. And for us, it's not so bad for us to then spin up a virtual machine in Azure in the closest data center and then just hit them that way. So you always wonder, does it slow down the regular script kiddie out there who's going to grab this flaw and run it against every WordPress site out there? They're not going to see the site. So winning, right? But it can't be your only defense. I guess I wanted to bring it up as a topic. Like Patrick and Carl, what do you think? Is something like that useful?
So it's defense in depth. I think it's useful, but it's not the only. It's not the silver bullet.
It's something that you implement while the tomahawks are in the air.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So
it's a little extra.
What I like to say is, we talk about obscurity is security through obscurity. People say, oh, you shouldn't use security through obscurity. But my analogy is always, tanks don't depend on obscurity for their full defense, but we also don't paint them day glow orange. You still want to hide things. You still want to make it difficult. I think this is part of that. You don't want it to be the only armor available to your vehicle, but you want it to be part of it because it's defense in depth. It can't hurt.
Sure.
And the more hoops I make the hacker jump through, the fewer hackers that will make it through those hoops.
That's makes sense to me.
I wonder, Patrick, if you were to paint tanks day glow orange, if that would instill fear, and that might deter people.
I just put a big toothy grin on the tank,
on the front,
like a tiger's face.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I don't think that's how it works.
Okay. Back to reality.
On that note,
let's talk about Android. Apparently, there was an escalation of privilege bug in Android.
Yeah. So let me give you a quick summary of this month's fixes in Android. So if you have an Android, you may want to think about at least reboot once a week. That's common recommendation from NSA and everybody, but you should at least update as soon as you possibly can. So this month, not that big a deal. There are 5 high severity flaws in the framework, 4 high severity flaws in the media framework, 7 high severity flaws in the system, 2 vulnerabilities with undefined severity in media providers, 1 high severity flaw in the AM logic
and
components,
a
5 high severity
in
flaws
a pear tree
in the media tech components, 3 high severity flaws in the Unisoc components, and 6 high to critical severities in the Qualcomm components. Other than that,
it's fine.
It's pretty secure. It's good.
Do Android phones automatically update themselves, or do you have to? I guess if you have auto update turned on.
Yeah, I was gonna say it depends. You can turn on auto updates. Like I know on my wife's phone, she is a diehard Android user, will not switch over to iPhone ever. So I have hers auto updating. But most other people who I'm concerned about their security, I tell them they should move over to an iPhone because it's not necessarily saying they're the best and most secure on the planet, but they do have a very good framework of updating stuff.
Let's put it this way: Dwayne would be happier to have a target that is an Android than an iPhone.
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
So, which tells you that they're more secure.
Yeah.
Every time I see an Android on a wireless network I'm attacking, I get super excited because there's all sorts of fun stuff you can do with them. iPhones, I'm like, nah, whatever.
Fine.
It's probably a watch. I'm gonna leave it alone.
So what does the average person need to do? Just reboot their Android phone, update it?
Average, recommendation would be every week you should reboot your phone anyways. Like every week, because there's stuff running in the background, and if you're like, if you're like my wife, she has 300 tabs open in her browser and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
That eats memory. You should reboot it. Most RATs, the remote access tools that you would pick up, pieces of malware that you might pick up for your Android, don't stay resident through a reboot. So reboot's always a good thing to do.
Okay.
But the thing you should do above and beyond that is go to your settings.
Yeah.
And then in there should be your software version. And usually, depending on the version of Android you're on, there's a update now, and then there's a auto update checkbox. And you should have that checked off. Always auto update.
Okay.
And that way, if you're rebooting once a week, you're auto updating, so you're always getting the latest updates. You're not going to be the slowest running person when you're running away from the bear. Which is not a reference to Russia this time. just the general bear.
All right. So reboot once in a while, auto updates.
Reboot.
Yep.
Patch. Don't surf any of the shady sites.
That's right.
And don't download any of the bad apps.
Right. And you know what they are, don't you?
I produce most of them. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Anything signed by Dwayne is bad.
Yeah.
There actually is a list somewhere of Android apps in the store that are problematic.
Yep, and a lot of them they try and remove. The problem is, like, sometimes they'll still stay resident on the device if you've already downloaded them.
Right.
So yeah, just be careful what you're downloading. And honestly, another thing about like digital hygiene, if there's apps you notice you never use on your phone,
get rid of them.
Remove them.
Mm.
Yeah. Because you have no idea when that app updates if they're going to push remote code that allows them to get access to your contacts.
That's
or
true.
Remote code that does whatever, right? When it updates, it updates.
And companies get bought.
Yeah.
Sometimes a bad actor, a nation state actor, has not been known, not unknown for them to buy their way into access to hit a target.
Sure. Yep. They have the money and the means. Yeah. Absolutely.
Speaking of buying your way, let's talk about Sugar.
Sugar's awesome.
The Sugar ransomware. So this is a ransomware as a service operation.
Yeah, and it's targeted to the home user, which is really nice,
bad.
Right?
This is not good.
Businesses have been getting all of the ransomware fun, and now you at home too can participate in the fun process of getting all of your systems encrypted and paying to have them released.
So I will make one prediction here. So basically, the problem of ransomware has traditionally been a business problem. I don't honestly know off the top of my head what happens if a person gets a ransomware. Usually, the bad guys aren't after the little fish historically. So this is that change. This could very well be the breaking point where after this, it pisses off so many people that there's a public outcry and there's actually an attempt to fix it. The attempt to fix it could be, we've identified, who's doing the ransomware and we're going to shut them off the internet. That's pretty drastic because they're probably going to have to take whole countries down or whole municipalities down. But I think things are going to get drastic once the average population is really that afraid of ransomware.
Yeah.
Sure, but now they're at least making it more accessible,
more affordable.
The experience, right? So in this particular case, this is a Bleeping Computer article. Somebody was infected by this new Sugar ransomware, and the payout to get the network back, to get all of his files back, was $4.01.
What?
In Bitcoin?
In Bitcoin. Yeah, 0.00009921 Bitcoin. They're trying to say, you know what? It's the commodity market. If I can have 1 billion people give me $4, that's still a lot of money.
But everybody that you commit a crime against is another thing that when you are charged, is going to contribute to your sentence, right? So,
Yeah.
so why go wide with the volume at a very low price, even though most people would just say, all right, here's $5, go away.
Right.
Because a lot of companies are getting religion about ransomware. So we have a client we're talking to now that in the last 18 months has been hit with ransomware twice. And they're finally getting the message. This isn't going to stop. It's kind of like if you get an easily preventable disease twice in 18 months, you're probably going to say, you know what? I didn't enjoy that. I'm going to stop taking the unnecessary risks.
How did you know, Patrick? You're a smart guy.
Dwayne doesn't pay attention to HIPAA rules.
No.
So, we're starting to get used to it, and organizations are starting to get to the point where the insurance companies aren't willing to pay their big ransoms anymore. The companies are starting to get to the point where they're not willing to divulge the breach anymore, and the laws are starting to close in on that they have to divulge these breaches. And so it's going to get harder and harder. To some extent, that's great news, but now it means that the ransom gangs are going to shift down to smaller fish.
Yeah.
Well, so Patrick, is this? Let's say you and I and Carl are running a ransomware.
We're not, but just say that, okay?
I feel like Patrick had to qualify this hypothetical situation
really,
with
a little bit
reality.
Too quickly, Patrick. Listen, we need to rehearse more for when we're pulled up on the stand.
So remember,
because what would be more obvious than having a podcast about security? Nobody would ever suspect.
You don't want the deep fakes to have to work so little to produce the incriminating video that shows us confessing to running such an organization.
That's right. Just take all these little pieces of audio and put them together.
Can we trust Brandon?
So let's, yes, yeah,
implicitly.
Okay.
Implicitly. So let's say the three of us are running a ransomware
which we're not.
gang. Do we think?
And again,
okay.
Let's say Dwayne is a purple-headed Molly Godmans.
He might be,
which he's okay
which he's not. But let's just say,
I have no proof of that. Anyways, go ahead.
So let's say we know what we're going to say, and it's not true. But let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we run a ransomware gang. Do we think this year's profits are going to be better or worse if we hit large organizations, governments,
for a lot of money,
or tons of little individuals? Now, there's still some, you got to go out and buy Bitcoin and that sort of stuff, and that's not a super easy proposition yet. Although I think PayPal's making that easier. You can now buy Bitcoin.
Thanks,
through
PayPal.
PayPal. I'm almost positive.
Yeah. Another way I can lose money.
Thanks,
PayPal. That's like when the mugger's like, I want $100 or I'm going to kill you. And your friend's like, I'll give you the $100. No, I don't have $100. You can owe me. It's not a problem.
Yeah, no problem.
Shut up. You costed me $100. I don't know. The problem is, I think this is a trend where it's going to smaller organizations, because you and I have dealt with some small organizations that got hit with ransomware, and it's devastating to their businesses. Even they're getting their act together, but it's going to take more time. So I think it's a diversification of risk for them, and I think you're right. That is the calculus. That's the analysis here. I hope that we're near the end of the ransomware era and not in the beginning. But that depends on people.
I can't see it being the end.
I'm hoping. Well, I would say that you would agree that if it became illegal to impossible to pay a ransom, then it would end.
No, I don't think it'd matter. Honestly, I don't think it'd matter. This is an age-old grift. This type of thing has happened way before computers existed.
Yeah.
Like, I know where you live. You want protection money for your store. It'd be a shame if this thing got set on fire.
Right.
Yeah, but
right. So these types of things have always existed, and people have always paid, and it's always been illegal.
Yeah, but there's a big difference
why
between.
Would it stop now?
Put it this way: at the corporate level, a publicly traded corporation cannot commit these crimes by paying a ransom if it's illegal. You would cut off a massive amount. I mean, we've had police departments pay ransoms. So if you cut that off, then they would be forced to only go after individuals, and then only individuals
Sure.
that were willing to pay. Again, it's the same thing. It's the reason why we had the policy of we don't negotiate with terrorists, because if you negotiate with terrorists, then you just spawn 10 more terrorists. If you
Sure.
don't pay ransoms, they don't propagate because there's no money in it.
Right. And I mean, honestly, your network should be prepared to be ransomware. Like, you should have a backup plan.
We do.
You should have a recovery point in time. You should have fully available.
If you can afford it, you
PCs
should
and
have
networks and
redundant
that sort of stuff.
hardware so you can switch back and forth. You should test your backup plan.
But I think the downside of that is, let's assume it's not data loss you're concerned about.
It's breach.
Or encrypt. Yeah, exactly. It's the breach part. Like, okay, now they have access to all of my customer records, and they have access to all of my medical records and that sort of stuff. That's going to happen just because there's no way to 100% secure an organization. It's just not
I agree,
possible.
but we shouldn't. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try. And the other thing is, I'm not one that likes the idea of ever being given an ultimatum. I'm far more likely to tell somebody to pull the trigger if they say do this or else, because then they own me. I've lost my freedom. I've lost give me liberty or give me death. I hope I don't have to test this theory,
I have but one life to give to my country.
Yes, I regret
Patrick's.
it. That's right. Thank you. But it's well, so when somebody, I watch all these movies, when somebody says, well, do this or else I'll shoot you. Well, you're going to shoot me anyway, so no.
Yeah.
I'm not going to play along, because I'm going to end up dead and a pawn. And that's the other problem with this, is we don't know whether that data is getting sold on the black market, on the dark web anyways.
No, agreed. Yeah, agreed.
I'm sure they're not deleting it.
All right. Well, that was drama. Now let's get to something a little more mundane. CISA warns admins to patch maximum severity SAP vulnerability. So this probably affects one of our listeners, if that.
One of our listeners.
And they
SAP,
probably know.
Yes. Oh yeah, I would hope so. So over the last week, February 8th, 2 days ago, there was a pretty major vulnerabilities in some of SAP's products. I want to say it's like 3 or 4 CVEs came out from it, resulting in data loss, the ability to run commands, so RCEs, etc. So this is another one to, just if you operate, program against an SAP installation in any way, just make sure that you are protected and you are patching this week. More than most, this week's important.
Okay.
And if CISA warns you, you should listen.
That's right.
You should.
CISA talks, people listen. Well, they should.
So it really only affects you if you're an admin with an SAP system.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's just another patch.
It's just another
patch.
And there'll be many of them.
Oh, yeah. Fun times.
It was kind of I was going to say it's kind of a slow week. Like, there's not a whole lot. That sugar thing is really disturbing, but.
Yeah. I was excited about the spoolful.
Yeah.
We need a week or two where Dwayne is just abjectly depressed because there's no good news.
That's right.
There's no nasty news. There's no bad things happening. That would be good.
All the hacks are old hacks.
That's right.
Liz, would we say this is the 30th show we've done? 30th show we've done, and every week I've been excited.
Yeah. I'm hoping for some boredom from you someday.
Some nasty thing. Right. And no Log4j in the news this week. So
right. I wonder if
Skippy
that's
on that.
Finally getting under control. And nobody got sued for negligence. So as far as we know, anyway.
Right. So slow week.
We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening. Thanks, guys.